Hi everyone. I'm in my car, not in front of the house this time, but we're gonna do it. Today's video, as you can tell by my shirt here, is discussing the Chicago Cubs and my thoughts on the team, as well as some questions to consider with some suggestions, sort of the playing GM type of stuff, as to what I would do to make the team better for 2026. And in my notes, I've started to put kind of like in out of the park baseball, there's sort of a goal, for lack of a better word, in terms of they call it a focus. That's what it is. Yeah, like the focus. So you can have sort of a neutral focus where you're neither all in nor are you rebuilding, and then you obviously have rebuilding and all in, or win now, I guess is how they phrase it. I put the question mark of, is it win now? So I put win now with a question mark because I find that some of the moves this team has made and continues to make don't suggest that it's a serious win now team. And part of that, as I again look at my notes here, if the luxury tax for 2026 is going to be about $244 million, I think that's about right. And right now, I guess they made a signing today, but the point is, this may have changed prior to another move as well, because I think they brought back both Hobie Milner and Caleb Thielbar, or brought in Milner and then brought in Thielbar. But the point is, they still have a good, we'll just say $40 million to play with to even hit the first luxury tax threshold, which I don't think they paid it last year because they've lost some guys. But anyway, we're getting away from the point. The point is, serious teams like the Dodgers, obviously, the Phillies, the Mets, now I would say the Braves, because they're actually spending for the first time in a while, the Padres, these are all teams that are seemingly serious, and that intent is shown by their payrolls. The Cubs, and the next team I'm going to talk about, is in the same boat, and I can talk a lot about them because they have an owner that owns another team that I follow pretty vigorously. But again, we're getting away from the point. The Cubs should probably be at about, I don't know, like $260 million, which based on these numbers would leave maybe $45 to $70 million, anywhere in that range. So the point I'm making is, if they're actually serious, having lost Kyle Tucker, having traded for him, Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wisniewski, Cam Smith, that's part of their farm system, that's the last guy that is in particular, to let him walk out the door and only get a comp pick back, having lost to your division rival for the division, and then lose to them in the playoffs, they need to show some intent and try to either bring back Tucker, which there doesn't seem to be any sense that that's going to happen, which maybe that wasn't the best fit, and I get that. But to not replace that offense is, to me, insane. And as a fan, I would question what the ownership's intent is when you have this opportunity to spend. They have for years. They haven't had really any success since like 2016 when they won the World Series. And a lot of that was based on building up through the draft and international signings. Guys like Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, that one dude we don't talk about. Who's the pitcher? Dang it. I know the face. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Jake Arrieta. Yeah. Guys like that. Was Kyle Hendricks there then? I don't really remember. Anyway, the point is that they built through the draft, through the farm system, etc. And now they have some guys that they've brought through. Pete Crow Armstrong, Ian Happ's been there a long time. Recently, Matt Shaw, They brought through Cade Horton. They have Alcantara, Ballesteros, Triantos, I guess, is still in AAA. Casey, Jackson Wiggins. These are all guys that there's been success through the farm system. They've rebuilt the farm system. They've produced these guys. The question is, this is supposed to be a serious team from a big market. Where is the money being spent? And this brings me to the next point. Before we even get into what needs to happen, the next issue is next year, after 2026, I don't know what this person behind me is doing. After 2026, here is a list of players whose contracts either are expiring or they have a mutual option. And most of the time, mutual options are not a thing, as in one side or both will decline. Shota Imanaga, who took the qualifying offer, he's making $22 million. Ian Happ making $20 million. Seiya Suzuki making $17 million. Jameson Taillon also making $17 million. Nico Hoerner, one of their better players, is making $12 million projected this year with, actually no, it's not projected because he had that contract, so he's making $12 million. The mutual options are Matthew Boyd at 14.5, that's what he's making this year, and Carson Kelly, who is making $5.75 million. All told, that's over $100 million if all those guys leave after 2026. So to me, that says a couple of things. There's really no excuse to not make at least one longer term commitment, at least a couple of years, if not a few. Plus, I may have forgotten to add in a couple of the relievers who, relievers are relievers, so I do get that. But to not, sorry, there's someone behind me. Anyway, it'll be all right. The point is, you have a bunch of guys, maybe you extend one or two, or maybe you figure out something with the mutual option guys. I mean, Boyd is older, Taillon is older, Happ and Suzuki are into their 30s, so maybe one of those stays. Maybe you trade the other, maybe they just play out their deal. Imanaga seems to be on the decline, so that's probably why he accepted the qualifying offer, because he wasn't necessarily going to get a better offer out there. That's not substantiated. I'm just saying that. That's maybe why he did that. Carson Kelly's getting older. So it's not as if, the thing is with these guys, it's not as if they're, other than really Hoerner and Suzuki, I would say, none of them are huge misses. It's just, you have all this money about to come off. Why not make a couple of splashes? Which brings me to the next point. So I think the bullpen is mostly set. They brought in Phil Maton. They brought in Helby Milner. They've brought back Caleb Thielbar. They have Palencia, Hodge, Brown, Little, Roberts, Wicks, Snyder, who was brought in, I think, from the Mariners. He was with the Mariners for at some point last year. And Hollowell, as well as a few others who are like the likes of Jack Neely. The point is, they have arms. They probably need one more. And we might as well just cover that now. So I think the throws hard but has some control issues is Seranthony Dominguez. That's an idea. Probably the preference, since Palencia had a bad second half, and I don't think any of the other guys are really closers, would be Pete Fairbanks. I think that's a fair shout. I don't know who they would necessarily trade for. Maybe someone from the Rockies. They have some guys like Halverson. Who knows? But I think there's no real reason to not make a run at Pete Fairbanks. That's one. Although, again, their bullpen situation is not too bad. In terms of the rotation, they have Boyd, who could leave after next year. Imanaga, who's going to leave after next year. Taillon, who's going to leave after next year. Ray, who may well be in the bullpen. Steele's coming back, has a couple more years. Assad isn't great, so may end up in the minors. It's starting to rain, which is great. But I don't know what that was. That was crazy. This Subaru was hanging out behind me for like, about 10 minutes right there. They pulled up right after I started the video. Anyway, so my preferred signing for the Cubs is Tatsuya Imai. I think between him being relatively young and having seemingly, at least in theory, a higher ceiling than the next couple guys I'll mention, he's probably the guy. He's been somewhat vocal in the media. I mean, maybe that's just for show about not having the intention to go to the Dodgers, which is fine. You have a couple Japanese guys as it is with Suzuki, although he might leave, and then Imanaga, who also might leave. So maybe that could be like you sign him, and then after a year they go and he's the Japanese guy. I don't know. But he's my pick. Backup options, Michael King has the durability concern. Zach Gallen had a bad 2025. Maybe you could get him at a discount. Maybe he'll be high value in terms of actual performance versus what you pay. That's starting pitcher. Other than that, to me, the fact that they're talking about trading Nico Hoerner, I think the only way that's acceptable is if they sign Alex Bregman and move Matt Shaw from third to second. But again, I'd honestly rather have Hoerner and just extend him, if he's willing to do that, obviously, than pay for Bregman, who's like 4 years older. I'm not really understanding why they would trade Hoerner. I think that's easily, you have a ton of money, you put that money in a homegrown player who is averaging, who put up like 4.8 WAR in 2025. You extend him, keep him around for a few more years, and that's that. So that's one of these issues, is what do you do with him? Personally, like I said, I covered that already. So what else do we have? There's the Happen Suzuki situation. Like I said, I can understand letting both go. I just think it'll be kind of weird to maybe you give Hap the qualifying offer. I don't think he's had one yet. Maybe you do that, and maybe you extend Suzuki for a couple years. I think neither's good defensively at this point, based on the stats and kind of watching them. Obviously, Hap's better. Suzuki's probably better off as a DH, but he can play the field. He's not Juan Soto out there. But bat-wise, at this point, Suzuki's consistently for the past 3 years been better than Hap. So of the two, maybe he would earn more, and they're cheap, so maybe they keep Hap around and not Suzuki. But to me, I think it's clear that you'd keep Suzuki over Hap. And then, as I said, I would keep Hoerner and then just bring in another bat. Two guys, I think, based on not being necessarily, I wouldn't say not top of the market, but yeah, they're not top of the market. They're kind of further down. They're like in the mid-market. Kazuma Okamoto, however you say that, and Eugenio Suarez, seeing as Matt Shaw is probably the worst infielder they have, although obviously he's the youngest, so that's somewhat expected. Michael Bush not getting replaced, although it might help to have an extra in case you need someone to play over there, which I guess that was kind of the point of signing Tyler Austin. Although, again, that doesn't help with these guys are cheapskates narrative, seeing as rather than go get a big name guy, which there's still time, obviously, but you would think they'd aim a little higher than that. This isn't the Brewers. This isn't the Pirates. This is the Cubs. They should be aiming higher. Do they have any desire to win? That's a serious question. I mean, to get Kyle Tucker and then let him go and not even try to replace him, it's not a good look. I do like Alcantara and Casey, so I would give them a chance, which again is why I said probably an infielder instead of an outfielder. They have Scott Kingery listed as the basically utility infielder, so maybe Matt Shaw's more suited to that role on a winning team in 2026. If it's Suarez, I think this is a lineup that could accommodate his swing and miss and would obviously benefit greatly from his power. So I think there is some sense there. I just don't know how long they would want to, how many years they'd give him, maybe like 2. Have him play third some, play first if needed, DH, that makes some sense. With Okamoto, he's a bit younger and he's an unknown. So there's that. I think if you're looking for a known entity, that would be Suarez. If you're looking to maybe find some better value and hopefully things go well, that would be Okamoto. There are other guys. I'm just going to list those two. So that's pretty much it. I mean, Imai, Suarez. Again, that wouldn't be my pick. My pick would be Bregman. But I don't think they would sign Bregman and keep Hoerner. So, or maybe they sign Bregman, trade Hoerner at the deadline, or just let him go after next year. I don't know. To me, if you're going to get one, if you're going to have one, it should be Hoerner. So I don't really understand that logic, unless you're going to trade him for a haul right now, which he only has a year left. So how are you even going to get a haul? Like I said, that's kind of crazy. But overall, I think the reality is that they need to spend money. If they don't spend money, they're probably going to come up short to the Brewers again, which is pathetic. And the rest of the division is not even good. Cincinnati's doing nothing. Pittsburgh has no offense and is basically doing nothing. And St. Louis is rebuilding. So there's really no excuse for the Cubs to not be good and spend some money. Like I said, to reiterate, I would be looking at Fairbanks, Imai, Suarez for a couple of years, and pretty much call it a day. And that would probably put them right past the first tax, but not quite be at the second tax. So it's not even like that's that crazy. It'd be like 25 for Imai, maybe up to like 30, which I think 25 is about right. 25, and then the rest would basically be, who knows, somewhere between 10 and 15 for Fairbanks, and then about 15 for Okamoto. Or, sorry, 15 for Suarez is what I meant, sorry. Which, again, that would be about whatever that was. I'm not doing the math in my head right now. It'll be a little over 50, let's just say. It'll be like 55 to 60. So they wouldn't get past the second tax. They'd be around in that range, and that would be a serious Cubs team. Let me know in the comments what you think. Who do you want the Cubs to sign? What do you think about the situation? I know it's getting dark, but that's about it. I will see you in the next one. Peace.